Good morning, witchy friends. So today we're going to talk about vulnerability and what it means from a spiritual perspective. A lot of this comes from the fact that it is indeed turning into the darker half of the year, thus the veil is constantly getting thinner and thinner. And I have had a lot of experience in the last few days, just kind of learning a little bit more about what it means to be open and vulnerable when you're going after lessons, I guess. So you all know for a while that I was in a place of very low vibrations, as it were. And I felt I couldn't connect to anything spiritually for a long time. And that kind of started getting better probably a little over a week ago. And so I just wanted to write down a couple ideas that I thought would kind of go in and help understand a little bit more about what it means to kind of be open and vulnerable when it comes to spiritual teachings. And particularly in the way of listening and talking and communicating to spirits, specifically spirit guides, because I have a lot of experience in that field. And not everybody works with them. This is just for those of you that do. If anybody even wants to listen to my advice, that's fine. This is just my own rendition, I guess, of working with spirit guides. So, when you're getting ready to go into meditation or any sort of a composed going after a specific lesson type thing, and this even goes for past life meditations, past life regressions, and I certainly did this when I did that and learned about my past lives, or at least one of them. And there is a really old video on that you can find somewhere if you're interested about that. But I did my own past life regression, really, and Roland was there to kind of walk me through it and tell me what was going on. It was very, very emotional and very moving, and it still has an effect to me on this day, and that was just one of the past lives that I think that I have, or had. But this isn't particularly just about that. This is just spiritual teaching in general, and if you're anything like me and kind of empathetic, you're going to feel or hear things around you all the time. So specifically, when I was out picking yarrow, and I said this in another video, there was a lot of just constant voices in my head, and I know that makes you sound like you're going crazy or whatever, but if you're an empath, you know that it's not just you. You're picking up on things and people from other times and places. And when I went to pick yarrow, I was getting a lot of communication from basically just the spirits of the land, and I completely understand why, because as I said before, the natives here used to use yarrow a lot in their medicinal practices, and they used a lot of just the herbs and stuff that was growing around in order to fulfill needs that, medicine and tea and all kinds of things. So it was not a big surprise that I immediately latched on to them telling me where to look, which best plants to harvest, what plants to leave, areas of danger, and it was really helpful. And I think it's really hard sometimes for people to get over the fact that they're not just hearing voices in their head, that it's actually someone or something else trying to get in. And you can shut it out if you want to. And I did for a really long time, I think, because it can be really scary. You're like, where are these people coming from? Why are they suddenly in my head? And if you feel like shutting it out, I guess that's a personal decision. If not, there is a lot you can gain from communicating with them. On the same note, however, not all of them are very nice. And it takes a lot of practice to determine who's nice and who's not, unfortunately, and I'm not the best at that even now. So with random spirits that come in, that's going to be a personal choice to engage with them or tell them to get the fuck out. And that's okay. But this is actually specifically aimed at the spirits that you work with on a day-to-day basis. So, we are talking about vulnerability and how it helps you, I guess, just engage and make these lessons more useful and helpful to you. So, one of the first things that, if you've decided to work with a specific spirit and you are constantly in contact with them, more or less, or often, as it were, and this can even be deities, if you like, or spirit guides, guardian angels, whatever you work with. But being open is like the first point on this list. And secondly, just being trustful, because if you know this spirit and you already know that they're not going to harm you and that they're actually sticking around to try and teach you some shit, then the best thing you can do for them and yourself is just be trustful. Form a trusting bond, like a relationship with whomever you're working with. Open to try new things. And I know in shamanism there is a practice, and I'm going to sound really stupid because I don't actually remember what it's called. Basically, you go into a meditation with a spirit guide and they take you apart piece by piece and then basically show you, like I say, I sound illiterate when I read this book a really long time ago, so don't laugh at me. Basically, get dismembered spiritually and see your entire body just break apart. And it can be really scary, but at the same time, you see where you're coming from and you see just so many things about who you are as a physical person, and then you see that your spirit is transcending a physical realm, I guess. And then, as far as I know, you get put back together in kind of this new way of thinking, and your body is put back together just as it was, or in a better way. And it's supposed to be a good healing exercise, a good trust exercise, to kind of go in and, I guess, just get killed in whatever gruesome way. And I think, honestly, even though as grotesque as it sounds, it could be really helpful, I guess, because I don't know, maybe it would give that sense of being rebirthed, dying, and coming back anew without actually physically dying, I guess, for, you depressed goths out there, or whatever. I'm targeting myself. So that's one of the things that they recommend in this book that I read about shamanism. Being sure of what you're after when you're going into a meditation can really help you stay focused, but do take the precautions of your protection. Always have an exit ready in case something does go wrong. And I'm not saying to flee at the slightest hint of discomfort, because that past life regression was very uncomfortable and very painful and super emotional. But I knew it was one of the things that you kind of have to work through. You kind of have to get through it. And it turned out to be okay, and I had a lot more understanding and a lot more just a sense of well-being, honestly. Always consider yourself and your feelings when doing shadow work. If it gets to be too overwhelming, definitely, don't continue with it if you're completely out of your element, I guess. You can always pick it back up at another time. The lesson isn't always the one you're after. It's a time of learning. So if you go into one, say, for example, past life regression, and you're going to say in your mind, I did so and so, and you think that from these said experiences, your birthmarks or your nightmares or whatever, I was a Puritan girl and I lived in a log cabin and I had 6 children. And then you actually go into the meditation and you realize that it wasn't exactly like that. And you actually were a Protestant farmer and you had no children. And yeah, so it's not necessarily always the exact thing that you're going in for, even though you're going in for a purpose. Like, keep your specific purpose in mind, but do be open to the fact that it might not be the lesson that you were expecting. And that's okay, because you're the one being taught, you're not the teacher. So you should probably listen to the teacher instead of just kind of coming in with these preconceived notions of what you're going to learn. So all in all, you're going to find out something about yourself that you didn't know before, or something about your situation that you didn't know before, and that's going to be okay because you're there to learn. So I just wanted to come to you today and tell you a couple of those things because I've been in this situation for a little while now. I've been working very closely with Roland, and it's been really nice. So I did just want to share a couple of my feelings with you, and I'm sure I've wasted enough of your time today, so I will see everybody in the next video. Have a good night.